Hey everybody, it's Mike King from Profiling Evil. I'm here with Chris McDonough, and tonight we've got some amazing guests with us. Chris, how you doing?
Mike, how are you? It's great to see you.
Doing really well. We've had a pretty eventful day today, but man, I am just so pumped up to have this panel of folks from Operation Underground Railroad with us tonight. Hey guys, thanks so much for being here. I'm going to kind of read off a couple of bios real quick to just get your names out in front of everybody. Thankfully, we've got your names also printed on the screen so people can see you, and we'll just kind of watch as people start rolling in here. But as I read out your name, if you'd raise your hand just so people can get an idea of who you are. First and foremost is Jonathan Lines, the Chief of Operations for Operation Underground Railroad. John comes with a 25-year law enforcement background in the federal government. He worked in a number of federal agencies throughout his career. He holds a degree from the Arizona State University and a master's degree from the Homeland Security and Defense, or in Homeland Security and Defense, from the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey. And we actually had a great conversation about some of the staff there who we know. John and I actually worked 2 blocks from each other, Chris, and I never knew it. In fact, it took getting together for us to realize how closely we were working for a number of years. He's the recipient of numerous departmental citations for awards, including the Department of Homeland Security's Secretary Award of Excellence. John, thanks so much for being with us.
Yep. He just slipped out for a second. He'll be right back, Mike.
He had all he could take already.
Now this is true undercover work right here. Right here with John. Who else do we have on the panel with us, Mike?
Chris, the next person is Tony Godwin, who has worked for the Garland Police Department for 26 years. And this is what I like so much about this. I mean, we're coming with a deep bench here, and we're talking with people who have been in the trenches and have been doing this for an awfully long time. Tony's currently assigned to the Northern Texas Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. And these ICAC groups across the country are one of the most amazing groups out there. And the kinds of things that you folks have to deal with, Tony and the rest of you, we just salute you. And folks are going to be amazed as they learn tonight what life really is like for an investigator that has to deal in human trafficking, child sexual assault, child pornography, and all of these horrible things that come along with that. With Tony, we also have Brandon Poor, and I wanted to introduce Brandon right at the same time. Brandon, just this week we had our first choir practice, and we introduced everybody to what choir practice means for cops. But man, I just think this is so dang cool because Chris, you may not even be aware of this. Brandon actually has a bachelor's degree and an advanced degree from a conservatory in New York City for music. And he's actually sung professionally as an opera singer. Wow. And so, Brandon, it was so funny because a few of our callers or watchers Monday night actually thought we were going to be singing. So we're going to have to invite you back for choir practice and have you just maybe belt out, one number. But folks, Brandon is not only a musician, but he's a police officer with 15 years of experience in the Dallas area, Dallas, Texas, in the United States, folks. He has been working internet crimes against children since 2014. And actually, you started the unit for your department, didn't you, Brandon?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. We are just so thrilled to be able to have you with us today and to share that. And then we kind of pulled a friend from across the ocean in today with us. And I want to introduce Art Sawicit. And Art is the primary country liaison for the city or for the country of Thailand. And Art, just how much I love your country. And we are so thrilled to have you. You are coordinating all of the activity between government and law enforcement and other stakeholders in this fight against human trafficking. And Chris, I don't know if you knew this, but this one was really a fun note for me to hear too. And that was that not only is Art a songwriter, and maybe throughout the show we might have a chance, Art, to expose you. I hope we can do that. But Art's also a graduate of BYU Hawaii, so that's kind of fun for us having where I just think that's
Aloha.
pretty cool.
Aloha.
And John, did Carlos make it, or he's still driving from work? Is that right?
He should be on in about 10 minutes.
So I'm going to hold off, and we'll just introduce Carlos when he gets here. But let's get right to work, Chris, and talk about this Operation Underground Railroad. Why don't you share with everyone why we felt this was so important?
Well, I had an opportunity to meet John and his team recently. And, we first connected at an ICAC conference, right, John? I mean, that was kind of where we kind of crossed paths. And then I had an opportunity to go out and sit with his guys, and we did a little training and shared some ideas on what they're doing. And this is the real deal, folks. I mean, we are here tonight to talk about what's taking place around the world. And we couldn't have thought of any better operators to bring in. And I think maybe, Johnny, when you set this up in terms of why these guys aren't covered up tonight, because they used to be working undercover operations. Is that correct? Well, and now you guys are on the other side of the coin today. So, Mike, that's pretty much how we kind of set this into play. And we reached out to John and said, hey, we'd love to have you guys come on and talk about your group. And you guys have a new podcast that just kicked off as well, if I remember right. Yeah, great.
I was going to say,
tell us about that.
It just
we want to support that.
Yeah, it's just launched today. It's our first episode. It's just an introduction episode that's out, but it's called Catfish Cops. You can find it right now at catfishcops.com, and we'll be on,
Catfish Cops. I love
Catfish Cops. Yeah.
Only Dallas, right? Catfish Cops. Love it.
And we'll be on all the podcast sites here shortly. So,
yep. So we've got some great things happening tonight. And so, John, tell us, give us the big story here. Where we at?
Yeah, tell us all about what Operation Underground Railroad is, John.
Well, very good. Firstly, thank you for inviting us. I think it's a pleasure. It's not only a pleasure, but it's an honor, and we're privileged to be here. The men that are with me, Brandon and Art and Tony, are part of our team. We have a large cadre of followers and an even smaller cadre of very, very specialized operatives and trainers. And these three gentlemen are part of that training force and operative force. But Operation Underground Railroad is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that was founded by Timothy Ballard, former Homeland Security investigations agent, happened to be working for me at the time when he left. And that was 2013 when he founded Operation Underground Railroad. There were quite a few cases that he was working under my supervision. And a lot of the casework took him overseas. And he would actually do training for our foreign partners in foreign countries. And they would talk about human trafficking, child sex trafficking, the scourge that it was endemically in virtually every country. And so he would offer some of the things that we were doing here in the United States. And it was very often that they would say, well, we've got cases right now that we would like you to help us with. But very few of those cases had a nexus to the United States. As you all know, when you work for the government, which I just retired 25 years as a supervisor with the Department of Homeland Security, you can't just go out and be the world's policeman. And even though we see terrible things happening all around the world, we have to one, honor and respect other countries' sovereignty, and we can't prosecute a case unless it has a nexus to a United States violation. So he would come back and we would talk about certain things that he would like to do in the foreign environment as far as assisting them with casework. And I told him that's basically all we could do is assist them with tutelage and maybe some case studies and so forth. But we could not send resources over there, meaning manpower, to help them investigate human trafficking cases. And it was frustrating to him, and justifiably so, when you go to a place and you get real-time information that children are being mistreated, abused, actually sold for sex in brothels. Yet if there's no nexus to a United States citizen or no crime that we can actually prosecute here in the United States, we just have to basically say to our partners, do the best you can. And that's very difficult when we realize that many of our partners were just overwhelmed under-resourced. They really didn't even understand how to pursue these types of violations because either their laws were antiquated or they didn't even have laws on the books that would protect these children. And so it was heartbreaking to him, and we had many long conversations. And so I supported him as much as I possibly could. We got creative. We created a venue for prosecution in certain instances where we would engage these criminal organizations and pose as tourists going to other countries. Therefore, there's a law in the books that says, a federal law that says you cannot travel as a United States citizen to another country and violate a child. If you do so, it would be the same as you were violating that child here in the United States, and therefore you could be prosecuted for that. So we would create scenarios and orchestrate casework where that would be the methodology, and we could do that. But unfortunately, we couldn't create that scenario in every case, and it weighed heavily upon him. And he came to me one day and says, "What do you think about me going out and I'm making?" I mean, these are many conversations, but there came a time when he realized, I think I can do a little bit differently, and I can broaden my reach if I go out and create this nonprofit. And many good donors were equally frustrated about this, and they said, "Tim, we will contribute to this cause if you will go out and try and put together a team and help our foreign partners and make this a worldwide effort instead of just him being restricted here to the United States problem." So that's kind of the genesis of Operation Underground Railroad. I joined him 3 years after. In 2016, I got a phone call from Tim as I was watching him from afar. And all right.
Well,
by the way,
while you take care of that
Our
dog,
family
and
loves dogs, by the way. Our family absolutely loves dogs, so you're good. You're good.
everybody loves dogs, but while John's taking care of that huge interruption, folks, we just want to remind you that we're talking about Operation Underground Railroad tonight. And we are so appreciative over the last 7 weeks that we've been in business for all the kindness you've expressed and the wonderful super chats and everything else. But we would ask tonight that any feeling you have of donating, that you push it right to Operation Underground Railroad, and let's put a little bit of money on the books for them to help fight this human trafficking cancer that's hitting our world. And we're going to put that up periodically through the night. And again, would just remind you, those wonderful moderators that are on there, and all of you, if you would just remind each other, let's just push any donation that you might have tonight over to Operation Underground Railroad. And John, we're going to go back to you to continue learning a little more about this. And then maybe as you talk, you could just introduce your team and have them maybe field a few thoughts that you have or things you'd like them to talk about.
I certainly will. And so the genesis for Operation Underground Railroad was Tim Ballard leaving the government, creating his own nonprofit. He worked for me as a special agent with the Department of Homeland Security. While he was with me, he worked Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. He was our representative with the Attorney General's oversight. And that task force is where state and locals come together with a mutual and a collective interest in safeguarding children. And they work in a task force endeavor, federal, state, and local investigators bringing every resource to bear to investigate child crimes. And so he was the HSI representative to our task force. So not only was he interested in this, he had a significant background in this, and this background had preceded him working with me as he worked in California and had extensive experience in these types of cases. But it wore on him heavily that he could not do more than just what he could do here in the United States. And so we had many long conversations. And he came to me one day and says, "John, what do you think about me going out on my own?" And I encouraged him. You know, he had been 10 years in. I think I mentioned that he has 6 or 7 or 8, 10 kids, but I think he has 9 kids, literally.
Yeah, so, we loved him. We loved him. He's awesome. Keep going.
Tremendous person. He's a great human being, and he was really, really passionate about this. And so I encouraged him. And again, I watched him from afar because I was still working with the government. 3 years later, he called me and said, "What do you think about joining the team?" He had gained some momentum. He'd done some great things throughout the world. And he felt like I had some things administratively I could add to the pot. There were a lot of things that I suggested when I came on board. He was very receptive. Again, we were a fledgling organization, 3 years old. He hit the road running. You know, we had bumps in the road. We made mistakes. We still make mistakes. but because it was such a large mandate to bite off, when you are going to commit to trying to remedy such a huge scourge in the world, $150 billion industry, second only to international drug trafficking. We know that hits every part of aspect of our society and every part of the world. And so human trafficking, or the commercial sex trade, is just an absolute scourge, and it's a plague on society, both here and afar. And that's what we're committed to remedy.
Okay, so let's hang on that for just a second, because what we want to do tonight is we want to unpack what the totality of the problem is here, and kind of let our viewers understand really, not operationally of how you guys are pulling operations off. I mean, with whatever you feel comfortable, but let's kind of take it in segments, if that's okay. Perfect. On some of the acronyms, and then some of the operational positions, what the real problem is, because I'm looking at some of the chat coming in here. There's a real concern here with moms and dads and kids, and we don't want to scare anybody, obviously, tonight, right?
Absolutely not.
We want to empower our viewers and our children and stuff. So just hang on just for a second, John. Mike, what are your thoughts on that direction?
No, I like it a lot, but I want to take advantage of the fact that we have a state trooper in the house now. And yeah, if we can bring in Carlos, that would be fun. Carlos, how you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going? How are you?
So everybody, meet Carlos Rodriguez. He spent 27 years with the Washington State Patrol, and did all that. I think just came recently, like within the last year, to Operation Underground Railroad. Is that correct, Carlos?
Yes, sir. Starting June.
Yeah, he's working the missing and exploited cases while he was at the patrol, and today serves as the domestic coordinator and works with John and the team here. And I just got to throw one quick curveball, because if you're looking at Carlos and thinking, how did someone that looks so young become a state trooper? Carlos, would you just take 1 minute and tell everybody how you got the job at the state patrol, and what happened the first time you got in a patrol car on your own?
Okay, well, when I first started, actually, I worked at a retail store, and I was really nice to this lady in the jewelry section. She was there with her nephew, and I treated him great. I treated him like he was an actual customer, like an adult. And that lady happened to be the head of HR for the Washington State Patrol. So someone there was working part-time, also worked at the State Patrol, said they had a conversation saying that's the type of person we'd like to have in the department. So I went ahead, went through the interview process, took the polygraph, and about 6 months later, I was hired on as a clerk, and as the mail boy. I was actually the mail boy of the Washington State Patrol.
Wow.
And so went from there. And then
you end up finally getting through the academy, and you get out on the road on your own, and this just cracks me up. What happens?
So this happens, I know for sure, on 2 occasions. I'm working in downtown Seattle area, and a call goes out over the radio that says Seattle local patrols, or Seattle Zone 1 is what it was, reports of child driving troopers patrol car. Well, it was me. We were getting calls in that because I looked very young. I was like 13 years old. So people were calling in saying that I had stolen my dad's uniform and car, and
so somebody snitched on you. Somebody snitched on you.
They figured me out. So that happened, and then usually I only got mainly it was usually waitresses or waiters that give me a hard time. For about my age. Usually, I don't know. I think people thought this kid's got to know some secret jujitsu or karate or something to be a trooper. And so I didn't really have many problems on the road. So
that's awesome.
Fights or anything like that.
You would have been a police commander's dream if you had a youth bureau program or wanted to put somebody in the schools. That would have been so fun. Well, thank you. In fact, everybody here.
There he is.
gosh.
Carlos.
There he is.
Yeah, it's on my coaching trip.
Take that.
Yeah.
You sure
That
you weren't
is
an
fantastic.
explorer in that picture? That's
No,
awesome.
No, I wasn't. Yeah, that's
Well,
me.
Wow.
to all of you, we just want to express our gratitude for choosing what we believe is one of the most noble professions. And we're going to ask our producer just to periodically put up some of the super chats that have come in because we actually have had some people roll in some money already, John, and we'll make sure we figure a way to get that over to you guys. But folks, if you want to donate tonight, and we would certainly encourage you to do so, please push that over. We'll put up the link to go directly to Underground Railroad, where you'll have the 501c3 benefits. And maybe Sunshine, thank you so much. Miss Sophia, holy cow, thank you. Barb Nauman,
Wow.
thank you.
Look
That
at
is
Barb.
just
Fantastic.
Is that great?
fantastic.
It's amazing.
This is why we love them. This is awesome. What a great cause you're donating to.
Little Big Town, thank you.
Thank you.
And by the
this
way,
is-
the names are hysterical. They're awesome.
Right.
yeah, we're going to do psychological profiles
Lisa
of all
Marie,
these names.
Darcy Ann 66. Fantastic.
Yeah,
Can you?
It's just.
Hey, she
Jan
had a question
Thurgood.
too.
Can we
Jan
go back to
Thurgood.
that if
What's
we can?
Darcy's? The one before, if you can. Let's see. Well, keep going.
And guys,
We'll get it.
I hope you realize. I mean, this is so remarkable to us. 7 weeks ago, we kicked off this channel, and Chris and I kind of thought we'd have our family members watching for 1 week and then telling us to go back to a real job. And everybody is just so incredibly genuine. And we'll just tell you guys what we did is we set up something that we call the evidence room. And we allow people to just go out and find clues to unsolved criminal cases. And our first preference is that they go directly to the police department, but they can send them to us. We have literally received hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tips that we package off and send back to guys like your police departments, and in hopes that people will follow up on it. So we're just so blown away by everybody, and thank you. Tony, tell us what your role is.
So I came on with O.U.R. maybe 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago. I heard about them through another investigator in my area. They came and gave us a meeting at our agency, and quite honestly, it sounded like a pipe dream. They were like, listen, we're here to support you, to help you with training and education and, equipment, if that's what it takes. And so that's how the relationship evolved. They want nothing in return from us. It's really a fantastic relationship. And so an opportunity came on to be able to teach other law enforcement agencies around the U.S. and some abroad to do the job that we do, because I've been doing internet crimes against children type cases for so long. I'm kind of the OG of the group in our area, me and just a few others. And then Brandon came on board and got started with his department. And so we began to teach locally, different courses and classes and parent groups and churches, civic groups, whoever we could talk to just educate people and bring them aware of what's going on. But primarily for O.U.R, we serve in the function and capacity to teach law enforcement essentially how to do the job that we do on a daily basis.
Interesting.
That's fantastic. Hey, John, why don't you spin us up and help people understand what the day in the life of someone at O.U.R is like, and let's talk about a few investigations.
Yeah.
Certainly. Well, it's important to know that we are all civilians, albeit most of us have former law enforcement experience, or even like these gentlemen, they are current law enforcement officers. We are called upon to do many different things. We have 3 E's. We enlighten, which means we educate general public both here and abroad. We empower and we emancipate. Emancipate means we want to make sure that ultimately we find victims of trafficking that we can rescue, and we can only rescue those victims with the use and with the help and assistance of law enforcement here in the United States and law enforcement in foreign countries. So therefore, as civilians, we just don't walk into a country and say, hey, move aside, we're going to find out where your trafficking is, and we're going to remedy that problem immediately, because we'll find ourselves in jail, if not worse. And so we work with our foreign law enforcement partners in the domestic or in the foreign environments. We help them evaluate their own legal system, their legal framework, their laws, make sure they understand what they are capable of doing. And then we help them develop strategies and methodologies so they can actually learn how to effectively investigate these crimes that are happening in their very country. Now, human trafficking and sex trafficking especially happens in many different forms. It could be online exploitation. It could be finding and exploiting the vulnerable, which is runaways, the children that are from broken homes, from displaced circumstances. Or it could be children that think that they are getting into a life of something fancy and luxurious, and you can work in a spa, and you can do massages and so forth, only to find themselves in the throes of trafficking, where they are, by force, fraud, and coercion, they are forced into the sex trade. And unfortunately, many of the customers in these foreign countries look like everyone on this call. They are Westerners that are actually going from the United States over to foreign countries. So one of the things we do, and I'd like these gentlemen could all talk to some of the different aspects of how O.U.R. empowers our law enforcement officers. One thing I want to make very clear: we don't want to frighten people. Your children are very rarely your children are get snatched and grabbed in a parking lot, or in a schoolyard, or off a park, or in the Walmart. That's not usually the way trafficking happens. A person or a minor is usually trafficked by somebody they know, somebody that is aware of their circumstances, knows their vulnerabilities, knows how to groom them, meaning working slowly, little by little, to break down their defenses and put them in a situation where they can be amenable to being trafficked, whether within their home, which is a very terrible thing, or within the community. And so that happens both here and abroad. And so we need to actually teach not only our law enforcement partners to recognize that, but we want parents to know that they need to be very leery of mostly the people their children interact with daily. Not necessarily the stranger that's going to pull up in a van and say, hey, little girl, come see the puppy that I have, or here's some candy for you. Now that happens, but that is the rarity. And I think everybody on this call either tell me up differently or not, but I would think that we've found that in very many circumstances, these children are groomed because they are put in a vulnerable situation. And many times parents and adults can prevent that from happening. And so let me get back to our foreign activity, and then we can get into a conversation about how each one of these individuals on this call has helped us in promoting and moving our mission along to actually safeguard children wherever they may be trafficked. And I don't like statistics, because statistics don't always show the true picture. Because how do you quantify something? One, the criminals don't want you to know what's happening, and two, that the vulnerable and the ones that are actually trafficked are actually shamed or fearful of actually coming forth and giving, or at least showing that they're part of this problem, or they were victimized in this. So it's estimated there are 20 to 40 million adults and children that are trafficked. 2 million of those around the world, it is estimated, are children that are caught up in being sold for commercial sex or exploited in some way for sexual gratification of another. So when we go into foreign countries, we sit down with them and we evaluate their laws. We will assess the needs that law enforcement has there, and we want to empower them. We don't want to go in and make the assumption that we can do things better than them. I think we've all heard the adage, if you teach a man to fish, you'll feed him for life. If you fish for him, you can feed him for a day. We don't want to feed anybody for a day. We want to make sure these countries are well aware of their capabilities. They change their mentality about how they should look at human trafficking, because culturally it's looked at differently from country to country for obvious reasons. There's so many different contributing factors to why children become trafficked. And so we try and break down those different elements within each country and say, where can we help you fix these things with resources, with training, with technology in law enforcement that will keep you one step ahead of the bad guys. And we'll talk to these good men that are on the line today about some of those technological challenges we have about combating the scourge that is happening every day online with our children that the parents need to know. So I'm going to go ahead.
No, so let's unravel that a little bit, right? Because that's a lot of information coming at folks. So I think it's important for parents to understand that 1993 was the really a game changer for everybody. And pre-93, most of the fuel that these individuals function under, i.e., inappropriate material and that type of stuff, used to be behind the counter at the 7-Eleven, or it was zoned in various type of communities as, inappropriate, obscene material. The internet changed all of that, right? In 93?
Totally.
Okay. So as a result of that, these chat rooms started to occur in different environments around the world. Okay. And that kind of opened up the predatorial behavior, right, Mike? Where they would start merging more towards the internet. And since that time, I saw one of the comments here was, how has this started to take a trajectory, and when really did that occur? So I just want to kind of set that as a plateau. And here we are 20 something years later, and you guys have a full-time job as operators and doing the things that you're doing. Okay. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just want to make sure everybody understands how you got to where we are today.
You're absolutely right. You are. And the fact is, selling other people for sex has happened since the beginning of mankind.
Right.
But unfortunately, with the advent of the internet and the accessibility to this material and the ability to communicate with others in anonymity and to actually play out not only your fantasies, but actually talk very frankly about the terrible things you're willing to do with a child. And there became these chat rooms and these communities online where these I'll call them these sick human beings that feel that is somehow appropriate to act out these fantasies and to actually offend children, start exchange not only imagery, but ideas about how to best perpetrate this terrible crime. And so not only are they fueling their own perverse desires, they are actually adding validity, or they're validating the activities of other like predators. It's a terrible thing that is actually happening. So therefore, law enforcement had to really, really realize that if they are going to somehow combat this, because children are online, and anytime you click on an application, you can get in contact with one of these people that are actually trolling for these types of children. And I'll let the experts talk to that, my cyber experts. So we enlisted the experts, many of the experts, and 3 of those individuals are online. And I'll get to Art in a second.
And we may have lost John for just. Oh, there we go.
There, am I back?
Yep,
Yeah,
there we go,
Before
John.
we talk about the internet, let me introduce Art real quick if I can, because can you hear me, gentlemen?
Yes. Sir.
Yep.
Art, how you doing, good sir? He's joining us from Thailand. It's very early in the morning there, but Art is a representative of one of our teams in that we have around the world, but he particularly works in Thailand, and he is our country coordinator, and he establishes all the relationships that are necessary for us to be able to work with law enforcement, work with government officials, establish ourselves as a bona fide, absolute legitimate nonprofit organizations. I will say there are a lot of nonprofits out there get to the root problem, and I'm very proud of the efforts and the work that O.U.R is doing. And Art is an extraordinary asset to us on the ground there. And so when we go into countries, we want to make sure that we empower the local governments, the local citizenry, the local governments there to do the things we need to. It's a horrible problem everywhere. But Art, can you tell us some of the things that O.U.R is doing that you're helping us accomplish in Thailand?
Yes. So O.U.R has been exposed to the Thai government in the past a few years, and I think one of our O.U.R strength, is the fact that every time when we go to the law enforcement agencies or welfare agencies, they probably expected that we are going to tell them what to do, but every time we go there and we say, we are here to support you and to help you, and that opens up a lot of opportunity for us to actually help the children, because if they see that we are there not to do their job but to support them, they feel more appreciative. And that's how we get in. That's how we work with the government, because we show them that we really want to help them, empower them, support them in this effort in combating with human trafficking problems. Then they are willing to let us into the world, and it opens up a lot of opportunity, like I said, to help the children in the ways that we wouldn't have been able to before. And more than that, what we also, and the way that we support the law enforcement agencies or even the welfare agencies in Thailand are providing trainings like online investigations or other type of trainings that related to child exploitation, sexual exploitation, and also human trafficking. But we also assist them in the investigation. Oftentimes, because we have been trained, they would ask us to assist with the investigation, to make sure that sometimes we have to go to the brothels, sometimes we go to the karaoke bars, because these traffickers, they would take underage girls as young as 12 that I've seen to work as a waitress in, for example, an karaoke bar, and then they and they kind of offer sexual service to the customers. So sometimes we have to do undercover work, and also we also have an aftercare team. So we do training, we do operations, and we also have aftercare team to assist the victims after they have been rescued. So I think we pretty much we support them in any way that we can to equip them. Actually, that's kind of, I don't like that word. I'm sorry. I will take it back, because they're already equipped, but we're there to support them. That's really important. And and that's why I'm so proud of O.U.R, because we are really sincere in helping them. And I want to tell all of you here that I have been working in many fields before, and this is one. This is the job that I'm so proud of, and I'm like cherished the most. Being able to save the children. Obviously, it's a dark world. Like if you are not in it, if you don't work as an operator or work in this field, you probably have some ideas, but unless you work in this industry, you will not know how deep and how dark it is. But on the other hand, it is so refreshing to see that every good guy, for example, Thai government, they're trying so hard to help, but there needs to be a balance. But the criminals, they're so smart nowadays using technologies. For example, the COVID didn't really help stopping the trafficking, the human trafficking, because now the crime shift from the offline world to online world, and we found that the government has more cases to work on online. So it's an everyday life problem, and I'm so grateful to be a part of O.U.R.
Art, that's amazing. The last time that I was in Bangkok, I spoke with the Thai Royal Police, and if I have the numbers right, it was roughly 20 or 25% of all the children just in Bangkok alone are not living with their parents. How does this impact this challenge that you have to protect children in a country like Thailand? And then maybe, Tony, if you could grab that and talk about it from the US, and if there's any comparative kinds of numbers.
Sure. Art, you going first?
Yeah, sure. When you say children not living with their parents, there are many situations, right? It's either because, but most of the children who are not living with their parents in Thailand, a lot of them are from neighboring countries. They're seeking. Some of them are seeking better opportunities. Some of them were here. Were trafficked here. And a lot of them who are trafficked, they don't even know that they were trafficked. They feel like, oh, they're here for a better life, for better lives, or to support their family back home. I admit that I think human trafficking or child human trafficking is a problem of all countries, and but from my experience, the government have been really trying to tackle this problem in the past few years, because they saw that the importance of this problem. And what happened was, what the trend that we see is actually now there are less, because we have been developing the laws, is particularly to combat the child exploitation and human trafficking. What we have seen is, because Thai government works with other embassies, other countries like the U.S., Australia, other countries. Actually, we see the less trend now in the human trafficking. But the problem that we start to see in this region is that because we are stronger at combating with human trafficking, now the trafficker, they start to go to our neighboring countries instead of Thailand. For example, like Cambodia, like Vietnam, and Myanmar, because usually, a lot of trafficked boys or girls are from these neighboring countries. And as we progress, as we've been working with law enforcement, and as the law has getting stronger and the law has been enforced, the trend is actually going down, but it kind of discouraged a lot of traffickers to come to Thailand, but to go to our neighboring countries. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we do have the problem, but we see a really good trend in this. And from working with the government, for the past 3 years, we can tell that they have been trying to work hard with the NGOs like O.U.R. or other NGOs to combat with the problem. So yes, the number is, I'm not sure how to explain this, but I feel like it's getting a lot better now, the trend, if you're looking at the trend.
Thank you, Tony. Can you take that? I mean, Chris, I don't know. What do you think about that? Because this idea that children will willingly go into a situation like this in hopes of a better lifestyle, coming whether they're from other countries or the country of their origin, that then they are exploited and they get pulled in, is just terrifying.
Yeah, it is, and it's going to be interesting to see if that trend line continues in the direction that it's going. But what do you think, Tony? Where are we at here?
I think like here in the United States, while it is considered one issue being trafficking and child exploitation, they are sort of split on some level. And so while we don't necessarily see a trend with kids who are living in parentless homes, maybe we see a bigger propensity for kids who are running away. Something as simple as just running away and not being at home. And so when a child, at least in our area, becomes a runaway more than, say, 3 times in a 12-month period, their propensity to be pulled into a trafficked situation increases exponentially. So at least here where we are, we try to make efforts to interject into those children's lives, into those families' lives, the support that goes behind it, as far as the advocacy center that we use and the multidisciplinary team concept that we try to use to pull those kids out, because over that extended period of time when they run away, they just are very susceptible because they are seeking something. It's whether it's what they're missing at home or just troubles that they have, or low self-esteem or whatever that may be. They will find that in a trafficker, and so it sort of transitions. But the problem as a whole for child exploitation is enormous. I just don't know that people really can grasp the amount of stuff that goes on. And I think, to back up to what Chris said earlier about, I think the internet and where it's gone and the way it's transitioned, it's just increased exponentially, because these people, these predatory behavior that they exhibit towards kids is sort of hidden behind the keyboard. They have this anonymity, or they have, they obfuscate themselves on some level. And so it just goes in line with, what we're all trying to do, which is just combat this. And I don't know what Brandon thinks, but I know he probably has some thoughts on it as well.
Yeah. Brandon, what do
Yeah, and Brandon, add to that. I mean, I don't have little ones at home anymore, but I got grandkids, and
Yeah.
we didn't fight this when my kids were that age. It was just emerging. But how does a parent know what their kids are doing and really have a proactive role rather than just hoping they're in the right space?
That's a great point. To build on what John said earlier, the old idea of the creepy predator in the van down at the end of the block looking to take children, we don't see that anymore. Obviously, that kind of thing is a thing of the past. But what we do see is those creepy predators are now coming straight into children's rooms via their cell phone and the internet, often under their parents' noses, who believe that maybe their child is talking to their friends on social media or something like that. And so often the parents aren't aware because they assume their child is doing what they tell them they're doing. And so what we try and tell parents to do a lot of times is just get nosy, get in the business. And that old adage of I don't know technology and, you know, my kids know it and I just don't. And that's where we're seeing, when Tony mentions the child trafficking victims running away, you know, you've got to think the technology available to them today, they're just used to it. They've grown up with it. They're using technology from the time they're born. And so most of the traffickers know that they don't have to go out and, you know, kidnap someone. They can coerce them or manipulate them into a relationship through those social media sites and through their chats with them on everyday applications that these kids are on. And so really when a parent says, I don't know technology, we have to kind of, a little tough love from us is it's unfortunately incumbent upon you. It's time to learn, because it's not going away. It's getting exponentially bigger. And, you know, most parents know phones and they know some of the apps, but what they don't know is that, you know, kids are going to have their apps that is their account for their parents to see. And then they're going to have the apps with the account for their friends. And so the parents need to go in there when they're not ready and not expecting it and just nose into business, because that's what parents do in every facet, I think.
So I have a question that came to mind here. It's important that parents understand those types of apps. Do you guys know a group of apps or the type of apps that, you know, kids are using nowadays? I know WhatsApp, you know, because they disappear messages and stuff. But are there any that you know, predators are utilizing, that if we saw it on one of our children's phones, that would raise a red flag for us to say, hey, this one's out of here? It
is a good question, Chris. Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say that there's no one app specifically to say to a parent or an adult with a young person in their life to say, hey, this is the app that you should look out for. I would say inherently there's a number of those apps. And so while we have some familiar ones that we're commonly dealing with, which is, you know, our Snapchat and Kik and some of the others. And
can you mention those? Can you tell our viewers what those are so that they know?
Sure. I mean, they're very popular in the sense that a lot of kids are using them: Instagram and Snapchat and Kik and Text Now, Text Free. And while inherently those aren't designed to be bad, where the bad comes in is when the kids of nowadays, they just glom onto all of the attention. And so having a certain number of followers or people that they're connected to that they don't know, that's where any app becomes very problematic. And so, you know, like Brandon said, parents just need to be very intentional. You know, they need to, if they don't understand, then they need to find an avenue to educate themselves a little more, or find something online to do that. It's very hard to sort of put all those eggs in one basket, because there's apps that come out every single day. And, you know, I'm sure others would agree that while they have some redeeming value and qualities, they also can be very bad if kids are not careful about who they allow to become friends.
And can I add on to that?
Yeah, please.
The old, we're not reinventing the wheel, and neither are the predators. So as sex offenders or people with a sexual interest in children have always done. Where there are children, there are going to be those who prey upon them. So it doesn't matter, what necessarily, we can't say like this app is predator central versus this app. If there are kids on it, there will be predators. And what we see a lot of times, and we really stress this when we teach to parent groups, is that kids don't know that they're giving so much information out. They don't realize how much information they're inadvertently giving. We use the example that sometime a kid who's really proud of their football team and, may take a picture in their jersey and tell the person that they're talking to that they think is their age, where they practice and on what nights they practice and what team they're on. And just by that little bit of information, they've now given someone, and they didn't know they did, the exact time and location and who to look for at this one place.
Good point.
That's amazing. John, is it possible to have some of the guys go into some of the cases they're working and anomalize them enough that you still protect what you're doing, but give people a feel of how you go about a daily job?
Well, it varies. And can you hear me? I'm sorry,
Yes.
I had to move a little
Yep.
bit. It varies. Would you like to talk about the online investigative work, or do you want to talk about some of the things we do when we're helping our foreign partners? Because
I think a lot of our listeners would love to first hear about internet work, don't you, Chris?
Yeah, I think that we start there.
And,
Go.
Yeah.
and I would almost prefer that, because that's absolutely applicable here. One thing I told Tim when I came on board, and I know that a lot of what we show on our media and our websites and so forth are international operations, but I will tell you, I told him we're not going to step over our own here in the United States for the sake of saving children in another country. Equally important, but we're going to take care of our communities and save these children that are right here in our own backyards. And therefore, I went out and I found the best of the best. And on this call are some of the best of the best. And they will speak to some of the things they're doing. And I believe that each one of these gentlemen, and I'm going to let Carlos talk a little bit. Carlos Rodriguez, who I met a few years ago when I encountered him as we were assisting Washington State Patrol, rendering support financially to their operations. Because as an administrator, longtime law enforcement administrator, I realize the biggest shortfall we have in any casework is funding for the cases. It takes a lot of money to do police work, and we need policemen to be well funded. And Carlos's group reached out to us because Washington State Patrol could receive these funds from private organizations, and gave us an idea of what they were doing. And we absolutely fell in love with the program. It's called Net Nanny. And I'd like him to talk a little bit about some of the things he's able to do, a little bit different than Tony and Brandon do. They do a little bit more proactive instead of reactive. And Carlos, if you're able to kind of give a sanitized version of some of the things you've done and some of the things you've seen as your, I think there's 18 operations yielding hundreds and hundreds of felons or now felons. I think that'd be interesting for parents to hear some of the things that our law enforcement officers are doing.
Yeah, so when I first started doing child exploitation work, a lot of the cases I was dealing with, which I'm sure Brandon and Tony still work these cases, but were peer-to-peer cases where people were trading sexually explicit images or videos of, well, it's children getting raped is what it is, and it's for sexual gratification. So that was the majority of my caseload, and then cyber tips that we'd get from our local ICAC, our Internet Crimes Against Children, which came from the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. And then we would get tips from other agencies across the state of Washington where their officers, maybe they didn't have the same training that I did or the small group of detectives I had. So we would help with those cases. And then I went to a conference in Shared Hope, which is, if you've heard of it, if not, it's a great organization. And they deal a lot with human trafficking. I saw a presentation there where there was a group, law enforcement officers, where they were doing police stings where people were showing up to pay for sex with minors. And the ages were in the later teens, so 15, 16, 17. So what we decided to do is, because of the cases that we've had where we worked, my task force did all child exploitation, so human trafficking, the sex trafficking, as well as online predation. So we thought, because of the images we'd seen, these aren't pictures that are, I mean, there were some, but the majority were being made in the United States, actually in our backyard in Washington State. And the cases where we're dealing with where kids, juveniles, are running away and then are being sex trafficked, we thought, what are these kids running from? Is it because these images are being created in their home? So what's the reason? So we decided to focus on the demand, and we lowered the ages to 13 and younger, and doing these stings. And essentially what we did is we based our online personas on people that we had actually come into contact with. We had actually arrested some mothers who are offering their kids up for sex to others in exchange for something, or just for sex because they think that that's normal, or kids that are running away, or kids that are just online in these different social media platforms.
So, Carlos, real fast.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
That's a lot. That's a lot going on here. And so kind of back up for a second. You said online persona. Explain what that means to our viewers, because, we've got moms at home going, you know what I mean? And
So
kind of
an online persona would be, if you're working in an undercover capacity in this area, it's something that we've learned that to develop through training through the ICAC. We want to make sure that you don't have other officers that are watching this that are just going out and thinking this is a good idea. You want to make sure you have the proper training, which is through ICAC. And the persona is basically, we're pretending to be someone else. So we're pretending to be a mother who has kids available for sex, or an adult that has control over children, or if we see something that isn't appropriate online, or we're pointed to go to a certain direction, then we pretend to be the person that's interested in that act in order to rescue a child. Or we're the 13-year-old runaway boy or girl or girls. So that's what our persona is. And that's based on reality. It isn't something that we just make up. It's based on actual cases that we've worked, or in the training that we went through, that was shared with us through our experiences.
So that's a scary thought in of itself, Mike, right? Here we have a panel of real heroes. Every one of these guys. And it's interesting to hear them each individually say, through the training and experience that we gained, to act, basically. Is that what you're doing, right, Carlos? You're putting a persona out there as if you are either a perpetrator selling a child, or potentially that child themselves, that you're putting yourselves into the virtual space. And for our viewers, the ICAC teams are Internet Crimes Against Children. These guys and gals around the world are absolutely heroes, because what we haven't asked these guys yet is the emotional impact and how it impacts them as human beings with your own children. Who has children on this panel by chance? Right? Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Everybody here. So these guys, not only do this for a living, okay, to protect our children, okay, but it also takes a toll on them, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize.
No, but Chris, I appreciate that. And Carlos, I want you to hang on right where you are, because I want to ask Brandon quickly to talk about this wacky thing about a mom who would, in their mind, justify that prostituting their child makes good sense. And talk about it from a demographic as well, Brandon, because these aren't just poor people doing this. Why don't you just spend a minute, and then, if you would, Carlos, pick it back up.
Yeah, online child exploitation, I'll say, doesn't know any bounds. I mean, and when you think about trafficking or someone offering a child up for sex or something to that effect, that's not just something happening in the big cities or in a country far away. It's happening in your backyard, in our communities. And that's not meant to scare anyone. That's just to say that if you're not aware of it, then you're not looking for those signs and red flags to be able to stop it. So, yeah, the demographics, it's very across the board. And just like John said, for those people who are traveling to be sex tourists, we tend to see a a certain age range of male BR suspects. As to be able to speak to why a mother would offer her children up, I don't think I have the qualifications or the I don't think anyone has that answer as to why that would be justifiable, but it certainly is true. We see it. I have done those cases, and I know that there are people out there, and as Carlos says, we don't base our personas on just something we make up. Oftentimes we're looking at statistics from our own cases, and things that have come in from real victims, and those are how we're sort of shaping our future proactive work cases, so that we can really go after what's being done out there in the real world. And so the mother offering her child up to split evil, obviously, and it's sick that there are mothers who are doing it. It's even sicker that there are people who are out there in the market to find a mother who is offering her son or daughter up for sexual purposes, sexual gratification. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's some sort of financial gain or some sort of need that they need. Sometimes they may have been a victim of the same treatment earlier on in life and they feel like that's a normal thing. And sometimes it's just because it's just an evil.
Thanks so much. Folks, Chris and I are talking with the team from Operation Underground Railroad under the direction and leadership of Jon Lines. We are so appreciative of them being here, and you'll see pop up periodically a link to donate to Operation Underground Railroad. If you feel compelled tonight to offer a donation, we would just push you to that web link where you can donate directly to them. We are so grateful for all of you being here. Let's go back to Carlos Rodriguez, retired trooper of nearly 30 years with the Washington State Police, now working in Operation Underground Railroad. And what he's doing is teaching us about what he does day to day in his call.
So back to the explanation of the operation that we conducted. We did the first one back in August of 2015, and O.U.R. at the time did support us. The task force that I was a part of in Washington State has a unique ability per state law to accept public and private donations. It was actually in the statute here in the law, or here in our state. So O.U.R. went ahead and donated some funds, and then we did our first operation. So the task force I was a part of, it was myself and at the time 2 detectives, and that was it. And our area of responsibility is the entire state of Washington. So in order to make it work, we went and made friends. So I had some friends in the narcotics task force that I used to manage in Bremerton, Washington area. So we used them to help with arrests and surveillance. Some other detectives within the Washington State Patrol and our high-tech crimes unit assisted, and in our general detectives assisted. And we had our federal partners, FBI helped, and Homeland Security Investigations assisted us. And hopefully I'm not missing anybody. But we did our first operation, and I'd have to say before each operation that I participated in till I got towards the end, no, I'd say each one, I was always afraid that no one would show up, especially the first one. I thought, is this going to work? We put all this effort into this, but people, they've shown up each and every time someone shows up to have sex with kids. And it's what I started to realize is me thinking this isn't normal. You start to think, well, this is normal, because why is this so easy? Why is it so easy that we're averaging 7 people showing up a night that we can handle, because you have to do your cases the right way. And if you're going to work for a period of a week, you have to get up the next day and start over and continue. So if you, in the beginning, when we didn't have as many resources, people to help, you're working extremely long hours. Well, that's not sustainable. That's not healthy. It's not healthy for your officers. It wasn't healthy for me. So each operation we did, we came up with additional ways to make the operations be more efficient. And as we did that, and we had more people wanting to help. Was a waiting list in our state to do operations around the state with different law enforcement agencies, because we had to partner with different agencies around the states to make these work. So it's extremely successful, unfortunately.
And sadly, every night you just set it up and predators show up.
Yeah. Yes. And so the other thing, to get a full picture of what the operation is, we weren't just setting it up to try to get numbers and, have a news media show, where we're going to say this, look at all the numbers and all these people we arrested. And we're doing this to rescue kids. So a part of how we develop things is we would have people there that could do forensics right there on site. We had people assigned to do search warrants when we needed to do search warrants, and that was their job. So we had different teams set up to handle different areas. So we were set up where we can continue to do the operation, and we could have another team going off site to a house to do an arrest if we needed to seek additional evidence, to gather digital media, to rescue children. There was a case I can think of where I was actually the person interviewing somebody. We're doing a forensic review of his phone, and there are images on that phone of a 4 to 5 year old little girl that wasn't an image that we call them series. So you can look at images, and unfortunately, when you do this type of work, you start to recognize different series, different images, because they're traded a lot. Well, this is one that we had not seen. So we did some further review, and we went and we found the little girl that night and made sure she was safe. And then we arrested her grandmother. So that's a case where somebody showed up for our sting for our children, our 11 and 6 year old is what he showed up for. And but then we actually rescued a 4. I believe she was almost 5 at the time.
That's great.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's put our seatbelts on just for a second. Okay. We got a lot going here. This is fantastic. And one of the things I want to help set up here is this idea of this predatory behavior. And Mike and I want to talk about this just for a second for everybody. When the internet came to be, as we mentioned a couple of minutes ago, back in the day, these individuals who are constantly fueled by fantasy, okay? And if you've not had an opportunity to go back and see some of the victim continuum videos that Mike has put up in, early on when he kicked this channel off, start looking at those, high, medium, low risk type of situations. And then the runaway concept comes into play for some of these kids that get basically, pushed into a different direction. But where I'm going with this is this. As predatory behavior kind of emerged from the 1995 was the very first time a sexually explicit photograph could be sent across the internet, okay, across the world. Okay. Once that happened, these chat rooms started to evolve, and you had this intellectual predator who came into the marketplace, for lack of a better term. This is somebody that was living what we call a secret life. And so, Mike, to kind of walk our viewer through, why they stay in that environment and how this has kind of now brought us, full circle to why we're here with this great team. What do you think?
Well, I'm sorry because my sound cut out a little, and I think I missed most of the question, Chris. But I think the messaging tonight is that predatory behavior is escalating because there is more ability to reach out and access children and adults. And Tony, what I wanted to throw into your lap for just a moment, and then John, if you could respond to this, is just the different methodologies that are being used to recruit not only adults but children to participate in this kind of predatory behavior. And then maybe just a warning to the parents again that we somehow remind or educate our children that you don't get back a picture that ends up on the web.
Right. To piggyback off of what I think John said earlier, is the whole process of child exploitation is grooming, and it's a grooming process that takes place, over a significant period of time. And so that process, builds up a child's confidence and where they begin to appreciate and accept those sorts of things. And perhaps that's not necessarily what they maybe see in what their current home life is. And so that begins to feed this process that eventually they think that it's okay, because they a lot of times will develop feelings for the people that put them into these situations. And and I'm speaking strictly from like the trafficking sense of what we know it to be in the United States today. From the exploitation side of the house, sadly, statistics would tell you that the majority of children that are being victimized or being exploited it's usually by somebody they already know. So it's, whether it's family or close family friends or something to that effect. But the cumulative effect is really, really very damaging. And I realize from a parent perspective, I'm a parent. It's a little shock and awe. If this is not something that's been on your radar or you've heard about, then this is something that you're hearing for the first time that could very well, take you by surprise.
Yeah. John, when I was at the Attorney General's office, we introduced the first ICAC team in Utah. And one of the things that we put into place at that time was a regular health check, an emotional health check on our agents. What are you doing to keep your team healthy?
That's a great question, Mike, and we're concerned about that all the time. And I just today received a message from one of my primary operators that he needs a little time. I commended him for acknowledging that, but I also was worried that people around him may not have picked up on some of those signs. The things that these good gentlemen have to witness and see and observe and consume day in and day out are the worst things you can imagine one human being inflicting upon another. It is horrific, and we can't even describe it without getting into detail, which I refuse to do, because no one should even know that these things are happening, especially to children. And these good men on here, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of officers every day that are committed to safeguarding children throughout the nation, are literally dissecting these acts online day after day to make sure they can gather the evidence and put together a very, very strong prosecutable case so that these predators are put behind bars where they can never offend a child again. And so this takes a terrible toll on these officers. It weighs on their mind heavily, on their soul, on their very psyche. You can't unsee the things that they've seen. You can't just wipe your hard drive clean like we can our computers if we have things on there. Your mind will never, ever forget. And you are haunted by these images, the cries, the sounds, and even the smells when they go into these search warrants and find true victims that they will never be able to rid themselves of. And so it is important for us to receive that psychological help and wellness. And I recognize that when I was a manager and a supervisor over these ICAC agents, we had to go for a 6-month. It wasn't mandatory, but we asked them to do a 6-month wellness check. We had contract psychologists that would help us. Well, we are now in a civilian organization. We are no less in need of that type of wellness check. So Brandon and Tony, they are still working with their respective agencies. Carlos is no longer with Washington State Patrol, but he is no less involved in the day in and day out consuming and thinking about, and the vicarious trauma that he can deal with as he speaks to these officers that he deals with this. So we keep a close watch on each other. One, first and foremost, we talk very frankly and candidly about how each other feels. I think there's a real strong camaraderie amongst people in law enforcement in general. I think we will all acknowledge that, but especially in a discipline so terrible, where the things that they say that they actually have to see day in and day out can have such a psychologically detrimental to their psyche. So I try and keep an eye on them. I watch them. Carlos and I talk all the time, and I'll be the first to tell you, I probably haven't taken care of myself very well, but I do know that I want these men and women under my management to know I care about them. There is nothing more important than their mental, psychological, and emotional well-being, and I don't want to lose one of them for the sake of saving somebody else.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want to ruin a good human for the sake of sacrificing them for someone else. I want to make sure that they're both safe, the children and those who are knee deep in this terrible, terrible, horrific crime.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I'm thinking, so Art, how do you decompress or work through this with your significant other or your family or whatever your circumstances may be when you're dealing with this kind of stuff? Because everybody needs an outlet, but cops don't share what they do day to day with their family. It's just too painful.
What do I do? I kind of switch my mentality. I don't know how I do it, but I find myself if I'm so stressed, I would just vent it with my colleagues, something that I can't talk to anybody else. But sometimes we help kids, and we don't have to tell them. I'll talk to my friends or my families because it's a good lesson learned. But I won't talk specifically about the case, but just to tell my nephews about some of the things that this is some of the things that I think by talking about these cases, and teaching my nephews and my nieces about these is actually one of the ways that I it's a therapy to me. For me, I feel like I can switch it on and off. So when I work in the past, I work as an undercover investigator. I would get sometimes after a big case, I would get really stressed and would get really mad, and I would talk. I'll be like yelling to my mom when I talk to her, and she would be like, "Why are you so angry?" And then I took a step back, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry, And then I realized that if something like that happened, I just have to step back, and maybe play the piano and sing and just let it go, like a song. and I'm good. So I think it's have different outlets, but yeah, the psych evaluation is also important because sometimes you don't know something is really happening in there. Can I share you about one case that may?
Yes.
Is it okay?
Yes.
This is a really big case because let's just I'll tell you real quick. So in February this year, we request a support from Department of Special Investigation of Thailand. So it's kind of like an FBI of America to assist them in engaging a target who is suspected of possessing and sharing of child sexual abuse materials, or CSAM, of a young unidentified Thai victim being sexually assaulted by the target. And this CSAM was located by the Australian Federal Police investigators while doing the follow-up on forensics on their past operation. So when they contacted us, so O.U.R has in Thailand, we have the cyber investigator, and we have an on-site investigator, and we have aftercare team. So first, what we did, we kind of gave the case to our cyber investigators to conduct open source intelligence gathering on the target to determine the best way to engage the target. So we found the target eventually, like, okay, we know that, we know where he lives and everything. Then we sent our on-site, our ground undercover investigator to contact the target and request the art lesson. After open source intel showed the target has previously provided art lessons to persons in the past. So for this information already tells you that, yeah, even though we have been talking a lot about online activities, but there's still a lot of offline activities by someone who you may not think that he would be the predator, like the child's teacher, like the child gymnastic teacher, or even, someone really close, the relative even sometimes. So what happened was the UC or the undercover was able to get full access to the target's social media profiles and his inner circle friends and contact. Now there's a lesson learned. Now a lot of kids, they don't realize that the privacy setting is really important. Sometimes they like to just tell the world where they are at, what they're doing. And the predator, they try to groom the kids by using these information posted on their social medias. And so they know which outlet, they know the needs. So they try to get to this child's life by actually, for this case, this predator, actually we found out from the interview that he went to the mother first. He realized that okay, maybe the mother wants the child to be the model, So he kind of like say that, okay, you know what, I work with a modeling agency, and if you want your kids is so good looking, I think you can be an actor. That's how he got into the child's life. Sometimes not through the child himself, but he did the research. He went on the mother's Facebook, and he contacted the mother on Facebook. So what happened was, so while our UCI was working with this case with this guy, he doesn't know, obviously. An additional open source intelligence gathering was conducted by our cyber investigators using the newly available information, and they were able to identify previously identified victim located in the CSAM find by the Australian Federal Police, and other persons of interest were identified in the investigation, and the suspected of sexually abused children during the child forensic interview conducted with and supported by O.U.R. We found that this victim was interviewed by the DSI investigators and disclosed that he was being sexually abused by the target that we have been working with. So then what happened was the target was arrested by DSI, and multiple search warrants possible locations where the initial CSAM occurred, and the CSAM was photographed. A new target then, now we have one target arrested. So then a new target was arrested at one of the locations at his modeling. That after DSI located the initial site of the newly identified victims' abuse, as well as thousands, I'm talking literally for now, thousands of other CSAM files on multiple devices. But this is the highlight. So O.U.R team digital forensic examiners assisted and supported DSI with post-arrest digital forensics. And this resulted in identifying over 200,000 separate CSAM files.
Wow.
And over
Home run.
previously, like over 50 previously unknown victims of child sexual assault and child sexual exploitation emerged. So now we are working with the DSI to go and find those victims, and those victims are not only from Thailand. We found a lot of information that some of these victims are from other countries as well. So what happened was this modeling target was found to be a largely successful and extremely popular modeling agency based in Bangkok. And this target was not only systematically sexually abused young Thai boys who were clients of his modeling agency, but was also found to be running a large-scale CSAM distribution network. He has customers all around the world, in America, in South America, all around the world. And the CSAM distribution was done through private secret groups on multiple networks, including Facebook, Twitter, or BAN. BAN is like, kind of like the Facebook. So
Holy cow, congratulations.
So this is what I'm telling you, that our work is more than just, there's so many dynamics in our works that O.U.R
Sure.
help the kids. So
Unbelievable. I mean, believable, but unreal. Great job. I mean, John, what do you, I mean, holy smokes. I mean, so.
And this is indicative of many countries. We're in about 28 countries right now, and what they're doing in Thailand is just representative of what we're doing all around the world, empowering our law enforcement partners, giving those good men and women the tools. And I do want to say very quickly that what Carlos is doing for us is he's taking the things that he was able to do successfully, and we are teaching our friends. We are teaching our law enforcement friends around the United States to plug in those same types of very successful tactics, so children throughout the world and throughout the United States are safeguarded. So when these bad guys feel that they can go online without any type of repercussions, they don't know who's going to be on the other end. We have no problem saying, hey guys, if you guys are going to be online, you're probably going to be talking to a cop. Because if they have these perverse desires to rape a child, we don't want them to show up and knock on a door and it not be one of our people that answers that door. And so, Art, thanks for that story. And I just want, if there are any cops that are within the sound of my voice and you're interested in developing this type of casework and this type of investigative activity, and your command staff has not yet bought into it or not yet supported you, or just doesn't see the vision of safeguarding children in this way, call us and we would love to teach you how to build up those capacities in your respective agencies. And that's what we do. That's what the good money that these people are giving us today allows us to do, to buy the tools, the training, the technology, the methodology, and just developing that absolutely unique and special discipline that these cops have to have. They have to be able to know how to do this. And it's our responsibility to give those good men and women that opportunity to do so. We're glad to do it.
Unreal. So, Mike, what do you think about, we grab a couple of questions here and just because it's lighting up, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, now,
Trey Latina. Wow.
I get chewed out for this every time because I say Dra Latina. And I want everyone to know that we are actually friends, and I have been given permission to continue to massacre that name. But this is in memory of her roommate, doctor, and you'll have to say that, Art. What's the name?
Dr. I think it's Chawchat Chintana Wong.
And
Wow.
You at least didn't massacre it. Chris, I would love to, I want to call out just some of the folks that have helped out, but I would really like maybe Tony and Brandon to share one of the cases they've worked on. And then there is just a boatload of questions from people. And would you guys hang around long enough to just answer questions from all these
Sure.
wonderful folks? Because they are just stepping
Absolutely.
up tonight.
We're here for the duration.
Yeah, I think for us, just to be respectful of time, I could tell you kind of quickly, because of our role, what we do with O.U.R, and we go train law enforcement in other states and countries. Probably our biggest feather in the cap came a few years ago when we did some undercover chat training with law enforcement out in California. And so we do a 5-day course. We give the fundamental tools and guidelines, and we are very strict to the guidelines. There are lots and lots of rules that we follow and we implement, and we're big advocates of that because we don't like this vigilante trend that seems to be going on by people online. And so it's very structured, but over the course of a couple of days, we provided them with some tools. And then by day 3, we just released this group of law enforcement people into the wild. And what was really very cool, and I know Brandon can echo this, is about day 3, we had one that really started to get the hook into somebody. Day 4, it really fostered. And then day 5 turned into an actual meet. And so we took this brand new class of law enforcement who just learned how to do this. And with Brandon and I sort of guiding, how to go about doing this, how to do the setup, we all kind of converged on this one location in this town, and a bad guy
I'll
drove.
share the fun stuff.
Yeah, and he drove 3 hours.
He drove 3 hours, and Tony helped in the interview and got a full confession. But what Tony's not going to tell you is that after the interview, he stepped out only to leave that other investigator in there with the suspect that felt so remorseful he had to get up and hug him for quite a while and just show his love in physical affection with that investigator.
I got a great picture of it. It was fabulous. But it was the culmination of a great week. And for it to end the way it did, it was amazing.
I bet you he's got a lot of hugs today.
That's amazing.
Keep moving.
John, aside from the fact that you receive donations, what can folks do that maybe aren't in a position to donate financially but want to still be a part of the solution?
Well, there's so many things that everybody can do. I think that the main thing to do is main thing to understand is everybody has a part to play in the anti-trafficking, countering anti-trafficking. We have what I would probably best be served to. The best thing to do is go to our website. We have a volunteer coordinator who absolutely does nothing but talks to people who want to get involved and offers opportunities. If you have a skill, if you're compassionate, if you can sew, if you can cook, if you can tell stories, if you can sing, if you can offer. One thing that we haven't talked much about is the recovery process, and the fact that the main objective of what we do is to identify these victims. We want to get the bad guys because every bad guy equates into countless numbers of people who will never be victimized again. But we want to make sure that we recover and rescue these broken body, souls, and minds that have been preyed upon by these terrible individuals. And so there's so much to that process that civilians that don't know how to get involved, there's such a need for volunteer to help in that capacity. We have homes, we have aftercare facilities where these victims are cared for and treated and given the nurturing and the love and the attention and psychological support. And so I would encourage anybody who's within the sound of my voice, go to our website, which is OURrescue.org. And they have a place where if you want to volunteer, you sign up for that. We have Janny Dix is our volunteer coordinator. She's tremendous. I talk to her on almost a daily basis about different organizations throughout the nation. We have groups in virtually every state who are volunteer groups who they can band together, and they can see exactly what needs they have in their respective communities, so they can help the anti-trafficking plight. So we are so grateful for volunteers. We can't do it without volunteers, and we can't do it without good people that trust us to put their hard-earned dollars in the hands of those people who are best positioned to help immediately in the anti-trafficking fight.
And how many countries are you in, John? Because is it just the U.S. or can they volunteer in every one of these countries?
Well, we can have volunteers from internationally. We have people, if you go online, you can see the 25, I believe, countries we're in and 26 states that we are actively working in. So, and I couldn't name them off to you right now, but primarily, if people from foreign countries want to know if they can help in their countries, we can put them in touch with people that will put them to work immediately. If whether or not listen, we don't have a magic bullet, or we don't have a monopoly on the anti-trafficking. There are so many good organizations that are out there doing the same thing. We collaborate with, we cooperate with, we support other NGOs that may have a shortfall in certain situations. We're all in this together. O.U.R. is just a tiny little drop in the bucket. And there are so many good people in other organizations and other nonprofits that are doing such great work. We want to commend everyone that is doing their best to safeguard children and anybody that's trafficked, child or adult.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, because our listeners they're all over the world. They are. Here's a question.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Chris.
How do cops, investigators keep themselves from falling into porn addiction, child porn? Are there mandatory checks on computers, phones, etc.? Porn addictions, are they mandatory? So basically, how do you shield yourself, from that problem once you've seen it? So who wants to take that? John, where do you want to go with that?
Brandon and Tony and my experts that are in the field right now. What have you seen in that particular area, Brandon?
We speak about just the terrible nature of this thing all of the time. There is no, and granted, thank God you don't have to see this unless you're investigating it, but there's never even a remote chance that we're going to fall into some sort of addiction to that. It is the most evil thing on the face of this planet. It is evil personified. So I know we have individually, as individuals, we may have checks and balances on things like that, and our departments may regulate that. But I think for me, it's safe to say that's not even the slightest possibility of ever happening. Tony, would you?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add is that, one of our requirements with the standards that we follow is that, there is a supervisor in our chain that does have access to anything that we have access to, passwords and usernames and whatnot, so that, gosh forbid something happens to one of us or we become incapacitated, somebody could get in and either begin that investigation again, or it's also for a checks and balances kind of thing. The mental health of, it's just emphasized so much more now than when I began doing this 13 years ago. It didn't even exist then. But to echo what Brandon said, if anything, rather than builds an addiction, it absolutely does the complete opposite. It does change you, I will tell you, but from that perspective, it's almost a complete 180, like a complete, I don't ever want to see this again. So,
Yeah, good,
you know,
good point. Thank Mal Bowman from Ireland. May I ask if you have an operation in Ireland, John?
We don't have an operation and we don't have a presence in Ireland, but some of our greatest friends, as Carlos can attest to, are from Ireland. One of our, we have a tremendous, Carlos knows him better than I do. I've met him many a times, but he's actually an instructor that comes and helps our investigators learn how to analyze the behavior of these predators, so we can feel more capable in our abilities to actually elicit disclosures when we have these people in tow and we're talking to them. We don't want to just find out, hey, we know you're here, we know you planned on raping this child, but we'd like to find out how many other children in your past. And this particular individual, I don't know if he'd want us to mention his name or not, but he's from Ireland and we have a very good working relationship with them. But I would love nothing more than to come down and sit down with the government officials, the Irish police, and if we could exchange notes, and if we can support their efforts in any way, we invite anybody from anywhere in the world to engage us appropriately, and we will engage you appropriately. We will never do anything under the cloak of darkness. We don't sneak into countries. We don't do things clandestinely. We do things absolutely above board, and we never, ever go anywhere without being officially invited by the highest levels of government. But Ireland would be a great place to go.
heck yeah.
Yep. So let's see what else we got here. Let's jump through a couple more questions. Question. How much work from human animal, how much work is done on deep web and dark web? That's a great question. The dark web is something a lot of folks don't know about. And some of these other browsers like Tor and a couple of these other hidden browsers that these characters are utilizing. John, who do you want to grab that?
Anybody in the middle want to raise their hand? Because I know you gentlemen deal with that almost in a daily basis, as you know, the complexities and the difficulty that is posed.
Right there. Carlos, you're up.
My experience with the dark web is limited. I will say that with the operations we have, I have had some targets dealing with Tor, but as far as besides that, I really haven't dealt with much of that. I will say. The problem with the dark web is it's so anonymous that those cases can be difficult. I know that you can be successful with those cases, but without getting into too many details about how that would happen. But that's been my experience.
Okay, Tony, Brandon, you want to dovetail into that?
Yeah, I'll add on that.
Good.
A lot of times people believe that what we deal in is only on the dark web, or they ask us, "Oh, you're always on the dark web, right?" And what they don't probably realize is how available it is on the surface web, on the normal internet. And most of our offenders aren't doing what they do on the dark web at all. We do investigate things in that realm, but primarily the normal internet is where a lot of our offenders are finding their victims.
Okay. Tony, anything?
Yeah, and I'd just like to ask you, add into this, there's a lot of discussion now about human trafficking being embedded within commercial sites. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add something on that. I was just having this conversation with my wife earlier tonight as we were shaping some ideas of where to go over the next few weeks on our own deal. But in that, I would say that people need to do some due diligence, because a lot of information does get put out there that is sort of sensationalized and sounds, sounds absurd, but it just seems to grow and grow, and it comes along with this believability, but there's been no validation or verification. And so while there are some instances, certainly, that happen, and maybe it's in a bizarre situation, but some of the more sensational things that have been thrown out on social media, one very common one I hear is, you're in traffic and somebody bumps the back of your car. And as you get out, you're immediately accosted and kidnapped and dragged into a sex trafficking ring. And, I think that that's probably been shown through other ways of validation that you should do your due diligence and not just sort of glom on to what seems to be a headline without some verification. So tread lightly, obviously be cautious because bad things do happen, but don't let it consume you.
Would that same counsel go to a $50,000 night table online?
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, the more recent stuff, what was one of the more popular companies, and there was this, ginormous campaign that came about don't do this or don't go there. I know where you're going. And again, I would say fact checking is probably paramount for most people versus, oh, so-and-so said it or posted it, so it must be true when in reality it's not.
Great.
Yeah.
We got a question here from Guy and Jasper. Is one country worse than others regarding predatory behavior?
No.
Okay.
No. As long as there's a commodity that can be found and the vulnerable to exploit, and there are people that are willing to do it, it happens everywhere. Now, different cultures and different societies and infrastructures make it easier for that to happen for varying reasons, but I don't think we can say and characterize that any country is any worse than the other. Everybody needs help.
And Kirama Okami, domo arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you. What about sex tourism by people in first world countries like the U.S.? Are people often prosecuted for that? If not, what barriers prevent that?
And thank you for that donation.
Yeah.
Very much so. Very much we want to see that anytime an American goes to another country and violates a child, that he is dealt with in the most severe and the extent possible that he can receive. So there is a law on the books, and it is a federal statute that says if you go to another country and you violate a child in another country and you are a U.S. citizen, and we find out about that, we can't wait for you to get home. And we also work when I say we, law enforcement. O.U.R. does not do that, but law enforcement, and if we get information that is happening, we turn that over to the appropriate law enforcement agencies, both here and abroad, to make sure that they have the right information to make sure that that case is investigated, substantiated, and that person is prosecuted here in the United States.
Yeah, and if you think prison is bad in the United States, think about prison in some of these other countries.
Mike, it's interesting. I'd almost, when I was in HSI and we worked these cases, I was with HSI, and there was many of these sex tourist cases where we knew that travelers were leaving from my area of jurisdiction, and then we coordinated efforts to meet them upon their first step back in the United States. And I almost wished that they would get locked up where they were coming from, because it's far better to be incarcerated here in the United States than some of those countries in which they were violating children. So if we can work with our foreign partners and let them get the first stab in, we certainly will.
Yeah.
Tracy Smith, much love to all, and thank you for your donation. Thank you for all you guys do.
Thank you, Tracy.
Great shout out to you guys there on all that. Hey, so I have a thought. So one of the things that we also, I think we want to empower some parents who may have younger kids out there, right? So one of the things I knew, is what I used to teach my children about a secret code or a password. So basically you give your child a code that you come up with. And if a friend or whoever comes up and an acquaintance or whatever and says, hey, your mom or dad told me to come pick you up, you teach your child to say, what's the password? And it could be balloons. It could be anything that you folks created that morning with your child when they left the house. And then the opposite works is when you tell your child, hey, Bobby's going to pick you up today. Mr. Jones is going to pick you up today with their parents. I've given them the password. You teach your child to ask, what is the password? And that shows that they have communicated with the parent and it also potentially could bless that interaction there. The second thing is, if your child goes into a bathroom, for an example, in a public place, teach them how to whistle. Okay? And one of the things we used to teach, and this came from Brandon Wilson when I worked that little caper many years ago. I started telling parents, teach your child how to whistle, because if a parent is standing outside of that door and the first thing you say, is so-and-so, if you're in there, please give me a whistle. Okay. And if you have any doubt as a parent in relationships to public places, public restrooms or whatever, go into that bathroom. Don't even hesitate. Okay. And we live in a world today where it's unisex bathrooms and all this other stuff. You're the parent, you go into that place and you can make sure that your child is safe. And there's other things, I'm sure that these guys, you can probably find it online, a lot of these secret tips, but we think it's important also. Also, if a car pulls up, teach your child to run the opposite direction of the vehicle. Don't run the same direction of where that car is pointed. Have them go that direction. And the opposite direction. And if they can, look back and see if they can get that license plate while they're running. Okay. We got another question coming up, Mike.
Hey, yeah, this is an important one. You're working in an establishment as a young person, guys, and you're being sexually harassed or you're even being sexually abused. You can't afford to lose your job. What do you do?
What I would say is one, if you're listening and it happened to you or you're talking to someone else, is you need to take care of yourself first. And anything that's happened to you, no matter what the person has said or how important you think that job is, you are more important than that job. And you need to make sure you take care of yourself. And it's not your fault. It's never your fault when someone takes advantage of you. I'd have to, from the experience and the kids that I've talked to in these different situations, that's one of the biggest hurdle that has kept them from speaking out as to something that's happened against them, as they feel it's their fault that they had some role in it, or that something was important and they didn't want to wreck a family dynamic, or it would be embarrassing. It's embarrassing, but in order for you to get through it, I challenge you to take care of yourself. That's the best way to take care of yourself, is to tell somebody what happened, because if you didn't want it to happen, it should not happen.
I would piggyback. I'm sorry, Brandon. I was just going to say, I would piggyback off of that to say, if you do that, if you have the courage to do that and you come forward, that we think we like, you will probably enable someone else who might be in that very same position to see that example that you set, to be able to come forward to say, I can do this. I was encouraged. I was empowered by what you did. I know what you went through was difficult. And like Carlos said, it's no way your fault. And your well-being is far more important. But I would encourage you to stand up so that you may empower somebody else. Sorry, Brandon.
No, you're okay. We advocate teaching parents too, that especially when it comes to sexual abuse and talking to kids, just have the conversation. Starting young and often. I tell this little anecdote a lot about, you tell your kid to brush their teeth from the time they're little bitty, and you say it in the morning, did you brush your teeth? And at night, did you brush your teeth? And then as they get older, you feel like, oh, I don't have to say it anymore, except you do, because you're like, oh, your breath stinks. Did you brush your teeth? And you say that from the time they're little until they're old. But we think like we just need to warn our kids about these predators or sexual abuse one time. And so we really want to teach parents to start those conversations early, have those conversations frequently. And my hope is that if you're actually doing that with your kids, that they would have 2 or 3 trusted adults, including their parents, that they can come to if that happens. And that way they don't feel like they can't tell someone because they'll lose their job, because they already know, hey, I've been trained for this. I know if something happens, I can go to these trusted adults.
That's awesome.
I think the other thing, feeding on what Brandon had said, is I remember with my kids, because when I was doing this work, my kids were growing up during that time period. And what I used to say is, if somebody ever did something like this to you, I don't know what I would do. as I started to do the work, I had to change my messaging because you realize that a lot of these cases are by people that are known to the family, and it can be someone that they care about. So you just really have to have those conversations and letting them know that it isn't their fault, and they need to tell you, no matter if it's something that you don't want to happen, you don't agree with it, that it's not your fault.
Great. Just a couple of quick shout outs. Guy and Jackie, thank you. Miss Sophie, thank you so very much. T. Royce, thank you for the donation. Wish I could send, don't worry about it. These great warriors here are grateful that you're even offering it up here. So we're,
hey, Chris,
yeah, Mike, go.
Yeah, we're about $170 short of hitting $1,000, and cops can't do anything without taking the opportunity to throw another cop under the bus at the right moment.
Absolutely.
So Brandon, I'm just going to say this and ask you a question. Would you sing a couple of bars if we hit $1,000 tonight? We got
can you sing Danny
more
Boy? Can you
minutes.
sing Danny Boy? Can you sing Danny Boy?
Yeah, I'm sure I can at least sing the first few words. I don't know the rest of them, but I'll try it. I'll look it up.
Okay. All right. So everybody, you heard
folks,
that.
Let's
Please
push
donate.
him over the top, and we'll hear from opera singer, police officer Brandon Poor, and let's keep the questions coming for a couple of more minutes. We are so grateful that you guys are with us today.
Yeah. And you have a podcast too, by the way, for guys and gals. If you get an opportunity, you want some more to dig into a little bit deeper into these guys. What's the name of your podcast again, guys?
Catfish Cops.
Go figure. Catfish Cops. Cops.
Our website's up and live. We're on Spotify. Hopefully within a few days, we're going to be on Apple Podcast, and Brandon said it.
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or catfishcops.com. And we're going to hopefully do some more of this stuff where we talk about cases and really more so even teaching parents and people about what happens and how to protect their kids and kids around the world and bring awareness.
Fantastic.
Great. Hey, John,
Sharon,
we're going to let you fill this one. Yeah. From Sharon Lee. Do you think the media or these modeling agencies and companies that produce TV and movies, et cetera, need to be held accountable for the sexualization of children?
Well, being held accountable, that's a difficult thing to actually evaluate to what extent we can do that. But I think it starts with the home. These children and what we as consumers, as we watch these things, what we accept as normal. I think there needs to be outrage by those people who actually watch these types of things and they disapprove of them. As parents, we need to teach our children what it means to sexualize your children and what it means to teach your children what it is. It's a tough conversation to have, but you need to now listen. There's no reason why a predator can say, "Well, look at that child. They look so tempting and tantalizing that I could have my way with them." A child is never ever going to be guilty of inviting that type of violation. And parents need to teach their children simple rules about dress and how it is that they should be modest. I think modesty has been lost. I mean, I might be old-fashioned, but I think that parents need to teach their children modesty, and the consumers that watch these movies and see these commercials and also are seeing these modeling agencies that are exploiting children and over-sexualizing them, they need to shout out. They need to rise up and object to this type of thing by boycotting those types of movies or just making them very, very well that they aren't well received. So it's a tough thing. Yeah, it'd be nice if they could be held accountable, but we don't know exactly what that means because society has gotten to the extent where so much of this is acceptable. I think the people that need to be held accountable are people that are actually watching, contributing, paying for, and patronizing these types of programs.
Yeah, that's fantastic. The donations are still coming in, and I just teed up our producer and asked if we could just show off a little bit of Art singing for a minute. And Art, I got to say, your English is beautiful. You've been so easy to understand tonight, and thank you for being here. Do you mind if we exploit you for a minute for something we found on YouTube from 1983.
Oh, put your seatbelts on, guys. This is great.
Heart beats fast, colors and promises.
Wow.
And how to be brave? How can I love when I'm afraid to fall? But watching you stand alone, and all of my doubt suddenly goes away somehow. One step closer. I have
Thank
died
you, Art.
every day.
Wow.
waiting for
Mike, that's fantastic.
Isn't that
That's awesome.
fantastic? And,
All
That
right.
is awesome.
Guys,
and
let's
I
give him a
agree.
hand. What about
And
that? What
go
about
to
Art?
Art's webpage,
We are
I mean,
not
to his
worthy.
YouTube page, and light up a few subscribers for him. And wow, these are pouring in. Can we
Look
get
at
just
Jana,
a tally
look at
of where
Jana,
we are?
Thank you. Pam, Jana. Wow. You,
Guy and Jackie, yeah, Rubicon, Jeannie Sullivan, Renessa Reed. So yeah, if we can get a count real quickly, because
just that, just that song, Mike.
yeah,
Just
we
that
we
song.
had a little thing the other night. Somebody said that choir practice isn't over till the fat lady sings, and Brandon,
That's
you're going
what
to
I'm
be
here
the
for.
fat lady.
Diane, thank you. Way to go, Art. Look at Diane. Way to go, Art. Thank you, Art.
Hey, we're still waiting for old
Lexer
Daniel.
super sticker for Art. Outstanding.
Beautiful.
You,
This
Heather.
is fantastic.
Heather,
And
I
John,
love
we're going
it.
to put it while we watch the tally roll in for a second here, and Brandon's warming up. Why don't you take a minute and know that how much we love our brothers in blue and all that you have done in your professional careers prior to
Meredith.
Operation Underground Railroad and since. Guys, we love you all. Chris and I are just humbled to be able to pay you a little bit of respect tonight. And Chris,
Cassidy.
maybe you say something. We'll let John do it. And then we'll get a tally and let Brandon light it up.
You know, Mike, I mean, Cassidy, thank you for everybody tonight. I mean, John, your team, we are grateful that you have. Look, we did it. 1150.
$1,150.
You did it. You guys.
Thank you.
Art, thank you. And we can't wait. And by the way, all of this goes to Underground Railroad, every penny of it. So, thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. And the only thing I will just give a couple of real fast and I'm out. These are the real deal. These guys are the real deal, guys. And we are grateful that you're part of our family and the PE family here. I know they appreciate your support all around the world. I mean, we can, razz Art over there, in Thailand, but we know his heart. And I think you saw his heart tonight, as well as Tony, Carlos, Brandon, John. We're all indebted to them because they're protecting our children out there in this big, crazy world. So, God bless every one of you guys. Thank you for taking your time out tonight to come, share, some of your skills and share some of the experiences that you're experiencing. And hopefully, but one question John, how many kids have you guys recovered? Do you know?
It is, I think the last report this last week was about 2,100 children.
Okay.
Oh, no. Sorry. 40, it's 4,100. 2,100 arrested, the traffickers arrested, and over 4,000. So it's just shy of 4,200.
But Art told us over 200,000 other kids. I mean, you've got hundreds of thousands of other kids that you have identified. I don't have to say another word, Mike. Love these guys. Keep it going.
You. John, I'm going to just give you a chance to thank these amazing people. Dra Latina, thank you. Everyone, thank you. We've missed so many of you tonight, but we have recorded your names. John, we're going to leave it to you. And then Brandon, you're going to close us out.
All right.
No, thank you, gentlemen, firstly, for the invitation. This is always great to talk to other good men. I know you have both had very successful law enforcement careers. I am now a civilian, spent a quarter of a century of my life dedicated to protecting and serving. I feel privileged to be able to continue that fight and work alongside law enforcement officers to empower them to continue the fight. I vicariously lived through our good boys in blue, men and women in blue. I support them. I have all the confidence in the world in them. They're taking a beating right now, and I want them to know that we support them and that we know that without them, we will never be truly safe and secure in our communities. And as far as our listeners, thank you for your generosity. Thank you for those who participated tonight and to the questions you asked. Feel free to reach out to us. You can reach us through our website if you have any other questions, or if we can help you in your respective communities, whether we can provide teaching, education, we can engage your law enforcement communities and let them know that we care about what's happening in their respective, in your communities and their respective jurisdictions. These good men that are on the program tonight are true shadow warriors. I call them shadow warriors because they don't do this. They labor in quiet and very, very silent diligence. You'll never see them. There's no fanfare to the successes they have. And that goes for the thousands of others, good and very honorable men and women that are also engaged in this fight to save and protect your children. That's what we're here to do. And they have a silent voice. Children don't have an advocacy. They don't have a group to lobby for them. And so we are their protectors. And we're grateful for to be able to do that. And only you good citizens that provide to us allow us to do that. And so on behalf of O.U.R, thank you. Brandon, I can't wait to hear you sing.
By request, huh?
Yes.
Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling. From glen to glen and down the mountainside, the summer's gone and all the rose is falling. It's you must go and I must bide.
Woo!
Fantastic.
Oh, man.
Thank you.
Good job, B.
We got
Thank
to cut this before I end up singing.
Folks, from all of us at Profiling Evil, thank you so much. We invite you to watch Lauren Sharp tonight at 9:00 now. She's going to be sharing her interview with Barry Morphew. And then we hope you'll tune in tomorrow morning early for a special announcement that Chris and I have coming out. Thank you so much for all you do, for the encouragement you give us, and for the critiques that you give us. Have a great night. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Mike. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Hit that subscribe button.